Quick editing Tucker note right at the beginning. I meant to get this out for Indie Animation Day on August 16th. Obviously that didn't happen, but you should go check out all the projects that participated in the event and support them if you can. I recommend Pia Haywood's Mugshot and Pollen, which I helped storyboard on, and the Anarchy Funhouse's The Adventures of Adam and Delilah, which I animate. There are tons more I had nothing to do with that I love. Lumi and the Great Big Galaxy, Little Wolf, No XP, too many to name. I'll leave a bunch of links in the description. Also, I wanted to say that, while at the time of recording there are no active crowdfunds for a Pigbog pilot or anything like that, if you want to support it and all the other things I do by proxy, subscribe to this channel, donate on Ko-fi and Patreon, all that good stuff that you normally do for people you like online. It helps me to afford to spend so much time adapting the pitch book like this, among so many other things. Maybe there'll be something solely Pigbog focused in the future, I'm not sure. If you want that, tell me in the comments. Let's get this show on the road. Welcome to the video series. Oh god. This is the first of several content warnings I'll be peppering throughout these videos where they're relevant. This is more of a general, non-comprehensive one that applies to most, if not all, subsequent videos, but there will be more specific ones telegraphed throughout, always at the top like this. So, this video series is me telling you about an idea for an all-ages animated show I have. It contains mild cartoon violence and comic mischief in the form of fantasy fight scenes that vary in wackiness, but even at their most dramatically tense don't get gory, because again, I want kids to be able to engage with this and not get too freaked out. But this hypothetical show is about a lot of things, topically and thematically. Most pertinently, the following: toxic masculinity and the effects of patriarchy on folks of all genders and backgrounds, child abuse and neglect, imperial monarchism and the anarchist politics that function in contrast to it, the closeted queer experience. No outright queer phobia, but the pressures that a patriarchal society would impose on queer youth that would make them want to stay in the closet. I'm gonna put a later page from the book here at the beginning to help set expectations. These are the tenets of Pigbog's kingdom, and they're things I've tried to keep in mind from the start while developing this story. Because any project, all ages or otherwise, has ideals and politics, even if they're not completely on their sleeve, and even if it doesn't believe it has them at all. In that spirit, 1. Fantasy is a genre, like many others, that is notoriously messy in the realms of representation. The old country is a wide, wide world. Pigbog's kingdom will have extensive LGBTQIA+ and BIPOC representation. Not cloaked in metaphor, not censored, but out in the open. If produced in, like, a big boy way, I will staff queer and BIPOC artists who can tell stories that I, as a white person who was socialized male, cannot. My big asterisk here is that since I, at the time of recording, am doing this entire project by myself still, those stories won't be there in the way I'd want them to be told in a production setting, which is by and for the corresponding marginalized storytellers and communities. But I'm saying this because I want you to know that I'm committed to the idea, and on the off chance that someone watching this wants to give me $1 million to have this thing made big boy style, I'm not just gonna abandon that principle. I want people to feel seen and refreshed by a diverse cartoon fantasy setting. I want to appeal to a generation of kids and young adults who have embraced D&D and other tabletop RPGs, many of whom are queer and or BIPOC themselves, and who often stretch those games' sometimes lackluster rules and settings to see themselves represented. Basically, you shouldn't have to look too far for representation in Pigbog's kingdom. Anyone should feel like they could feasibly exist in the old country. It's not a utopian society by any means, but as a story world, there's room for anyone and everyone. 2. If we fail or falter in the aforementioned endeavor, we will do our best to rectify and reduce harm. 3. Pigbog's kingdom is, among other things, about toxic masculinity. In depicting its ill effects and bad behaviors, I want it to always be clear that the show does not condone said behaviors. It is interrogating them and seeking to help undo them culturally in whatever small way it can muster. 4. Pigbog's kingdom will wear its heart on its sleeve, do right by its characters and creators, and convey its morals genuinely. And 5. If your network/streaming service/angel investor/other dubious corporate entity can't abide by these principles, I will not make this show big boy style with you. This show is not for you, it's for us. Alright. Once again, I've given myself brainworms about my own stuff. The call is coming from inside the house, and I'm picking up, and I'm licking the phone. I'm getting in there, at the expense of all the many other things I have to do. Such is the way. Welcome to the Pigbog's Kingdom Pitch Tome video version. In as few words that I seem to be physically capable of mustering, this is me describing to you a cartoon that doesn't exist. I'm going to tell you a story in a bunch of half mediums and attempt to coalesce them into its own singular one. In 2021, I made an 100+ page pitch book for a comedy adventure animated series. It's got character art, animatics attached to it that you can watch elsewhere on this channel, and that I'm going to intersperse throughout this video series at the appropriate points, and a whole lot of writing. Definitely too much. But too much quickly became the point of the Pitch Tome. I was doing this project partially for a class in my senior year of art school, mostly so I'd have more time to work on it, and a lot of my teachers and some people who saw it were telling me to pare it down, simplify, focus on brevity. They're absolutely right, by the way. If I was actually pitching this, I would want to do that to make it more digestible and appealing to unhinged people in suits acting on the frothing superstition of quote-unquote market research. By that description, you can probably guess how I generally feel about those job positions, but I didn't want that to be what this project was. Certainly not on the first go, anyway. I wanted to self-indulge. I wanted to wish fulfill. If I didn't go full hyperfixation mode and jokerify into my most annoying self, the Pitch Tome wouldn't be the Pitch Tome anymore, and so I wouldn't be having any fun. I think life is simply too short to not have fun with stuff. This is how I communicate with the world. This is the philosophy I've chosen to infuse into the work, and this is how I generate my joy. I talk more about this in a video I posted the day I quote-unquote published the original Pitch Tome. You can watch that here if you're hurting for more of my pretentious speeches. Starting this series with one of those was certainly a choice on my part. I meant for this to be a tone setter, but it's more of an endurance test. But it's important to me, so I'm gonna say it anyway. So yeah, this is essentially a video version of the original Pitch Tome, sort of like an audio book, but flashier and with some commentary by me that wasn't in the text I wrote for it originally. You can read the original Pitch Tome anytime for free on tuckerwoolley.com/pigbog.html, or download it as a PDF for free on any of my online storefronts or Google Drive. You can even follow along as we go. My hope is that in some ways this is a more digestible version of the book. Speaking for myself, I definitely absorb audiobooks, podcasts, and video essays better than I do reading text. Something neurodivergence. I thought a lot about accessibility when the original Pitch Tome really started ballooning in scope, and how to retain the excessive way I communicate without making it actively hostile to readers. My typesetting and graphic design in the original Pitch Tome and elsewhere is pretty abysmal, so hopefully the smaller chunks of text employed in these videos will be a little easier to swallow. Please let me know in the comments if there's more I can do on the accessibility fronts. I really want to do everything within my power and limited time to address accessibility across the board. One more thing. I know I was talking about the big boy version of the show a lot earlier, but the original Pitch Tome and now this Pitch Tome video version are each their own independent versions of Pigbog. That is to say, while I don't think there will be a version of Pigbog that's actually a show, even if there was and even if everything about it followed what I described in the Pitch Tomes to a T, an animated show is inherently collaborative. An actual show would touch so many more hands than just mine, and I would absolutely want it to, and that influence would make it a different thing. This is about a show, but my hope is that you don't consume these videos or the original Pitch Tome like you would consume a show. My hope is that you consume it like you would a proof of concept. And if in some capacity Pigbog does become a show in the future, there will almost certainly be things change and or left out from how I'm going to describe them here. So in hindsight, maybe you'll be able to see this as like the cool beta version of things. That could be fun to see, right? Basically, for the sake of our emotional health, I encourage you to do what I'm doing and see this as the one shot we got, technically number 2, and anything that may come after as cherries on top. I've tried to see life this way. It's made me happier. Anyway, I talk about these concepts in the preface. Yes, this pitch document has a preface, and no, this thing I'm doing right now isn't even the preface. This is like a pre-preface. God, I need to be put down. This is unconscionable. I've beaten this dead horse to a pulp. I've developed franchise fatigue for something that isn't even a franchise, and that is basically only being consumed by me. But if I dwell on it too much, I won't make anything at all, and I need to be doing something or the earth will overtake me once again. I'm not ready to die yet. I haven't told you about my funny cartoon again, but with my mouth this time. This wasn't the original first page of the book, but I'm putting it here because it feels more appropriate. I made the video you're about to see as sort of a trailer for the book, and to kind of commemorate/elaborate on the moment I decided to turn the pitch book into a pitch tome, the moment where I decided to double down and go full wish fulfillment mode. Imagine you're in a dank, dark dungeon. Surpassing many trials, you found the only key to a big, chunky lock on a demonic-looking treasure chest. Your prize? A dusty tome, untouched for centuries, bound in a long-dead beast's purple leather with ornate crimson crimson metal trim. It's not merely imposing for its size. You feel an energy, or maybe more like a vibe, resonating from within, beckoning toward you and dissuading you entirely in the same breath. It's the feeling you get before you step into a haunted corn maze at a Halloween fair. It's the distinct impression you're about to jump into the fog. Are you scared? Good. Me too. You open the book.
Haha! Big mistake, mortal! You have accessed the accursed glyph hidden within this blasted tome, and now you must meet the evil, diabolical, hyper-capable, and ruggedly handsome Demon Prince Pigbog! Woof, I'll never get used to that. Anyway, hello fools! My name is Pigbog, future ruler of the world and breakout superstar of the hypothetical cartoon Pigbog's Kingdom. This show's got everything. Comedy, fantasy action, drama, mild cartoon violence, and comic mischief. What does that even mean? Who knows? All I know is you should take a chance on my show and watch helplessly as my friends and I take over your TV and or streaming device of choice. Let me give you the gist. Welcome to the old country, a land of monsters. Bah, hello! Adventurers. Bah, sorry! And constant danger. But I wouldn't know, because I have to stay in my giant opulent castle all day. Now I know what you're thinking. Sounds like a sweet deal. But listen, I'm supposed to take over the whole dang world, okay? It's my destiny and stuff. I can't be cooped up here. I gotta be free, like the majestic monster I am. But my crummy cult thinks I'm not ready to go outside.
You need to be smarter before you're ready, Pigbog.
No, boy. You must be strong to survive.
They're both wrong. All you need is your rage.
How am I supposed to take over the world if I can't be in it? They treat me like a baby, but they won't let me grow up. Until the Xenospire, a crystal that channels the world's magic, gets bored one day and splits itself into 6 pieces. The reward for reuniting the shards? A plump, juicy wish, which I'm gonna use to take over the world, and thus obtain the respect and validation of others that I so desperately crave. Pretend you didn't hear that part. Anyway, the best part is I'm not alone. Yo, Clay! This is my bodyguard, Clay! He's totally made out of dirt!
Hello, Sir Pigbog. How can I assist you today?
Endear yourself to the people, Clay!
Oh, hello, people.
And this is my cool monster hunter friend Winona, who I trust implicitly, and who I'm recklessly confident isn't trying to secretly murder me. Isn't that right? Yeah, totally. Oops, dropped my sword.
And I'm Shrew, your new favorite cartoon character. I'm down to sell out, but you gotta let me, baby.
And of course, my mischievous self-multiplying minion, Shrew, whose evil comes from brand potential. Shrew plushies, t-shirts, and I don't know, maybe a water bottle? Everyone knows any successful world takeover starts with aggressive marketing. But first we've got to get all the pieces of the Xenospire, punch every loser we see, and be the best villains we can be. Cartoon fantasy action with a rude attitude. That's the Pigbog's Kingdom guarantee. So if that sounds cool to you, read on to see character art, juicy tidbits, and etc. And if it doesn't, throw the dang thing away. That's right, I'm a bad influence. But not necessarily for your children's network.
But before we get into all that, some more words. This is a book after all, or I guess this is a video of the beginning of a book, but whatever. Anyway, this is just some stuff I wanted to establish up front. Expectation setters and some ethical concerns. I'm sure it seems like having these kinds of concerns over the idea of a cartoon is putting the cart before the horse, but this book is all about putting the cart before the horse, baby. It's practically become a mantra at this point. So this is the preamble, and it's changed from how it exists in the original book, which you can compare and contrast on the website or PDF versions. I truncated/modified it for this video version because I feel like a lot of stuff in the original applied specifically to the experience of reading a book and not to the experience of consuming it this way. Too long didn't read, and one of admittedly very few in this book. This is an unconventional pitch document. It's really wordy and exhaustive because I am really wordy and exhaustive, and I understand that that's not going to be for everyone. Whether you're a development exec with not a lot of time, or a person who struggles to read super verbose things for any number of reasons, or both, or neither. I want this book to be unique and unconventional, not ableist and elitist. So if that doesn't vibe with you, I totally get it. This is me saying I respect that 1000% and advising you to skim or otherwise discard this book, because it will self-destruct in T-, just joking, probably. I think that creator-driven animation has the potential to be one of the most self-absorbed things in the world. Animation is a collaborative medium. Rarely does it exist as a product of one person, and even when it does, a person is nothing without their connection to other people. Other people made the tools they're using to animate with, and mass media is for the masses. Yet, a lot of people call Matt Groening the guy who made The Simpsons, when in reality, The Simpsons as we know it was born from many writers and artists and executives, and at this point, the cultural masses at large, who continue to shape it. To come up with an idea for anything, and then ask people to indulge in that idea, is asking someone to indulge in a part of yourself. And when it comes to animation development, it's asking a lot of other people to put in a lot of time, money, effort, and faith into that part of yourself. Even from a complete outsider's perspective, I can sympathize with how animation development is often described as pretty heartbreaking. So, I want to lean into the inherent indulgence that is pitching a show. I want you to take part in this with me, and ultimately, for me. By this, I don't mean that Pigbog isn't yours, or that it should have any less value to you than it might. I say this to reinforce the fact that asking anyone to take the journey that is this book with me is a pretty big and buck-wild thing to ask, and it would be whether the book was 1 page or 100. But because it is literally over 100, I want to put that up front and also acknowledge that, for a myriad of reasons, this book may not be accessible to everyone. The length, the verbiage, it would be a lot for anyone, but especially those of us who struggle to access things that are poised as the default level of a lot. In so many words, I want you to know that I know that, and I understand being with valuable time. This book Here's another kind of brazen I hope you can get into it. I think conventional pitch documents think very little of compromising. I think they assume you have the attention span of a goldfish. You think their insistence on appealing to the lowest common denominator and farther than I thought I'd get, honestly. Wow, which means from here on out, I think they're uncharted waters. I say this not to coddle and condescend to you, or even to persuade you into reading what you can probably already tell is an incredibly lengthy, esoteric, and perhaps wildly inaccessible pitch document. My favorite ride at Disneyland is Pirates of the Caribbean, because one of the first things it does goes against the implied conceit that a theme park attraction should make you want to be there. It immerses you in an incredibly moody queue and bayou scene at your initial dismount, and then a skull quietly informs you that you're screwed.
Psst, avast there. It be too late to alter course, mateys.
In so many words, this is my talking skull moment. You're a human being with valuable time. This book is a lot. I hope you can get into it, and if there's anything I can do to make it easier to get into without compromising too much of it in the process, I hope you'll let me know. You picking it up in the first place is enough of an honor to me. And farther than I thought I'd get, honestly. Wow, which means from here on out, we're in uncharted waters. Welcome, if you dare, to the old country. A monster hunter with a secret. A chaotic minion with no limits. An artificial bodyguard with a gentle soul. And a demon prince in over his head. Is this the motley crew who will take over the world, or will they be a footnote in a long, fantastical history? Pigbog's Kingdom, by, me. As explained by the gang themselves in the Animatic, Pigbog's Kingdom is a comedy-adventure cartoon about Pigbog, the latest incarnation of an ancient demon prince, and his quest to collect a bunch of crystal shards and take over the world. He's like an angsty teen Bowser, or Ganondorf with a lot less experience and a lot more insecurity. Pigbog is a young, ambitious villain in a colorful, classically inspired fantasy world called the Old Country. It's a big pastiche of fantasy tropes from all eras, all over the world. The show pokes fun at many, and also plays many straight, sometimes at the same time. Monsters, princesses, and adventurers run wild throughout the Old Country, and Pigbog wants to take it by storm. But he's in way over his head, because, well, first of all, he's been raised by a hyper-protective cult, and sheltered from the real world inside of a dark castle, unable to develop his skills, quote-unquote, on the field. His guardians are the latest in a long line who have vowed to keep the Pigbog dynasty's conquest alive, a process that's become increasingly harder over time with draining resources and dwindling devotees. They've given Pigbog this giant destiny, but they don't even let him leave the house, and it's really stifling. Pigbog runs away from home in, like, episode 6, we'll get there, but his inexperience puts him at a huge deficit in the outside world. The odds are against Pigbog as an amateur villain, and there are many more experienced heroes and villains in the Old Country who would seek to take him down. But Pigbog and his friends/underlings are determined to take over the world, and turn it into Pigbog's Kingdom. See what I did there? I think it's cute. To talk about influences for a moment, Pigbog's Kingdom consists of strong standalone stories with a serialized narrative through line. Think Steven Universe or the reboot of DuckTales. It's got the mischievous edge of Invader Zim and Billy and Mandy, the kinetic energy of OKKO or Craig of the Creek, and a lived-in fantasy setting inspired by Adventure Time, The Owl House, and the Dragon Quest games. The show's narrative structure is also inspired by shonen manga/anime like Dragon Ball and One Piece. Seasons primarily focus on Pigbog and company combating a specific specific antagonist for their shard of the Xenospire, with room for plenty of mini-arcs, side plots, flashbacks, and more in between. Throughout his sinister adventures, Pigbog will forge his own identity as a villain, attempt to match a world of dangers, and question his precious ambitions. It's a story about determination, identity, masculinity, and the gray areas between good and evil. For kids, Pigbog's Kingdom is funny, emotional, and packed with action and adventure. Its self-contained episodic format with a backbone of continuity appeals to audiences of all ages, and its character-driven plots, bombastic action, and fantasy set pieces will make viewers root for the bad guy.
That's right, folks! It's a show all about me! Am I marketable enough for you?
Sir Pigbog, there are several other characters in the show.
But I'm the protagonist! The main guy! I rule the show! But I suppose you should meet the rest. But I go first!
Pigbog is our villainous protagonist in training. He is the newest incarnation of a demon of dark magic, a temperamental tween Ganondorf from Zelda. Pigbog is stubborn, impulsive, short-tempered, and overeager. He's fiery, often literally. We like and root for Pigbog because he's incredibly driven and underdog, and his determination is infectious, albeit naive. He's also had a weird upbringing that's even miserable in a lot of ways, and I want to make it clear that most of his behavior is reactive to that environment. Child abuse in a kid's show, baby! Let's go. Pigbog's goal in life is to rule the old country as the world's greatest villain, and he's absolutely single-minded in this ambition, and most everything else. But he's lived a sheltered life in a big empty castle, not allowed to explore the world he's poised to rule. Will Pigbog be let to spread his wings, and will his determination hold up under scrutiny? Spoilers, yes and yes, but not in the way he thinks at the outset. Pigbog is a roiling ball of insecurities, ripe for character development, but he'll go kicking and screaming into it for sure. How exactly? Find out later. Voicekins: Alex Brightman, Branson Reese. Winona is Pigbog's semi-reluctant right hand, and our secondary main character. She's a professional monster hunter, who takes up contracts to capture or slay all manner of vampires, demons, and other beasts throughout the Old Country. Winona was hired by her mother Vera, ruler of the demonic underrealm beneath the planet's crust, to slay Pigbog and secure her place in the larger demon hierarchy. She's playing buddy-buddy with Pigbog until she can find the perfect moment to slay him, but after she gets to know him, can she go through with it? Winona wears a cool, grounded, and cutthroat exterior. She's pretty much the only person who can get Pigbog down to earth. Conversely, Pigbog's fiery personality motivates and pushes Winona without fail. Winona's realism can sometimes dip into cynicism about the old country's social dogmas and wider conflicts. Inside, Winona is less secure than she looks, pressured by a demanding but neglectful mother. Her life of danger and predator-prey dynamics can cause her to catastrophize. Life can feel like a tightrope act for Winona, but she's working with what she's got and trying to keep it together. But as much as the chaos of traveling with Pigbog while also trying to kill him drives her crazy, maybe she and her new friends are good for each other too? Where does Winona's loyalty lie? With her new misfit friends or her own mother? Voicekins: Io Idibri, Tawny Newsome. Clay is Pigbog's loyal companion and made-to-order bodyguard. A powerful construct made from clay, get it, and a magical gem. He can stretch his body at will like a more structurally tenuous Jake the dog. Parts of his body can act autonomous from each other if severed. Pigbog's guardians created Clay to be Pigbog's protector and caretaker. Pigbog's guardians train him routinely, but they aren't always around for day-to-day mundanity, or to keep Pigbog safe around the castle. That's where Clay comes in. While Clay's imposing silhouette makes him a formidable presence, his temperament does not. Clay is a gentle giant and blissfully naive about most everything. He's also incredibly polite and easygoing. More butler than bodyguard in that respect. Clay isn't exactly the evil henchman Pigbog had in mind, but he's a wonderful companion, a good listener, and one of the only wholly positive influences in Pigbog's life. How will Clay's polite demeanor hold up against the harshness of the outside world? Will he be able to protect Pigbog forever? Oh dearest, Sir Pigbog, I seem to have lost my head again. Voicekins: Jermaine Clement, Scott Adsit. Every villain needs some minions. Shrew is Pigbog's first and only one. Clay was made for Pigbog by his guardians, but Pigbog managed to create Shrew almost all by himself. Since Pigbog spawned Shrew, he's sort of like Pigbog's id. Silly, manic, chaotic, and random. The Gur to Pigbog's Zim. Shrew is always getting into scraps, making outlandish suggestions, and biting off more than he can chew, even more than Pigbog does. Also, Shrew has the power to duplicate himself. He can have up to 6 copies of himself active at one time. 6 times the Shrew often means 6 times the trouble, so he proves quite a handful for the gang, like a hyperactive kid who sometimes multiplies. Shrew is a parody of mass-marketable, creature-based media properties like Despicable Me's Minions, Pokemon, or Furbies. Mass production is so conceptually ingrained in Shrew that his power is to mass-produce himself. He's kind of like the Pigbog team mascot. Do I smell a toy deal? It smells horrible! Geez, Shrew, what did you eat? Will Shrew be able to keep his chaotic impulses at bay when necessary? Will Shrew's use as a minion run thin? Or will he find there's more to life than serving someone? Voicekins: Tim Platt, William Sawyers. Our Demon Prince protagonist has followers, a sinister trio of devotees who are current in line to help perpetuate Pigbog's dark legacy. Every time the spirit of evil within Pigbog is reincarnated, it needs to be summoned back into the world by powerful magic users and given a flesh vessel. It may not surprise you that following a Demon Prince of Evil isn't exactly popular, and the 3 members of Pigbog's meager cult are all that's left. Rex, Edison, and Flea summoned Pigbog into the world, and it's their collective duty to raise him into as powerful a force of evil as his many previous incarnations. The cult is ostensibly under Pigbog's authority, but make no mistake, they wear the pants around Castle Pigbog, duty-bound to raise Pigbog as the best villain he can be, although these approaches often clash. They're basically Pigbog's 3 dads. Think Casper the Friendly Ghost's trio of uncles, or a bizarro version of the main 3 crystal gems. I mentioned before that Pigbog leaves the castle after like episode 6, but Pigbog's guardian's influence on him runs deep even after he's no longer physically under their thumb. They're a triple threat of bad dad representation, and they've got messy elder gay tension in spades, even as they constantly bicker. Rex is the alpha of Pigbog's motley pack, and the most authoritarian of Pigbog's guardians. Rex is blunt, gruff, and tough. Ever since Pigbog was summoned, he's tried to instill a sense of hypermasculine power in Pigbog. Rex believes that physical might and unwavering brutality are the key to obtaining respect, power, and glory. He thinks you have to get by with an iron fist in this world, or you won't get by at all. Rex is in charge of Pigbog's fitness and combat training, leading him on rigorous workout drills and fighting routines using constructs, much like clay, that he has the power to summon. Much to Pigbog's dismay, Rex doesn't think Pigbog is ready to face the outside world yet, confident that you only need strength to survive and determined to instill that in his son. Rex's harsh demeanor and grueling physical regimens are thorough, and Rex believes this controlled environment is safer for Pigbog and everyone involved, but it's grinding Pigbog down. How much longer can Pigbog take the heat? Voicekin Mark Hamill. Edison is the intellectual of Pigbog's guardians. He's strict, studious, generally irritable, and insufferably snooty, almost a Squidward type. Edison believes instilling knowledge into Pigbog will help him most in the world. In Castle Pigbog lies a labyrinthine library filled with a wealth of knowledge about the old country and its magic, and this is Edison's domain. Edison wants Pigbog to read every magical tome in the library and learn as much about the world and magic as he can through the safe outlet of books, which bores Pigbog to tears. Rex focuses on Pigbog's physical muscles, while Edison focuses on his mental fortitude. Edison is also the most powerful magic user of the trio, and magic in the world of this show requires intense academic study to use safely. Pigbog doesn't have the attention span for any of this. Books bore and frustrate him, and he'd rather learn by doing. But Edison is paranoid on Pigbog's behalf. He believes learning about the world through books is much better and safer than loosing Pigbog onto everything uninformed. But Pigbog, ever hasty, is rapidly losing his patience. Will Pigbog let Edison have the last word, or is it time for him to rewrite his own narrative? Voicekin Jim Cummings. Flea is the undisputed wildcard of Pigbog's cult. He's hard to read, wily and mischievous for seemingly no reason, and performing strange tasks at random. Flea is eccentric, crass, and unpredictable, but his most notable and consistent feature is his rage. A hallmark of Pigbog's previous incarnations has been their anger. They channeled it into a destructive force that proved to be a great strength, albeit not sustainable or ultimately victorious in their conquests. Flea believes that the angrier the Demon Prince is, the more likely they are to succeed in their siege of the Old Country, and he thinks knowledge and strength matter little compared to raw stubbornness, willpower, and energy. As a result, Flea's style of guardianship is intentionally confounding. He frequently pesters Pigbog using cryptic platitudes and teleportation magic, and routinely sends him on strange errands around the castle that are designed to annoy, inconvenience, and frustrate him. While Rex and Edison are strict on Pigbog for what they think is his own protection, Flea has a different outlook on defiance. He believes Pigbog's anger and defiance will give him strength as long as his guardians never give him what he wants, which is to perform villainy out in the real world sooner than later. Flea thinks if Pigbog is always hungry for something, never satisfied, and constantly irritated on a base level, he'll do what his guardians want without them even having to ask. Voicekin Richard Horvitz. It goes without saying that Pigbog's cult aren't good guardians. I want them to display many of the signs and facets of abusive parenting. I want the tumultuous way Pigbog was raised to explain, but never justify, his behavior. By Pigbog eventually leaving his guardians and setting out into the world his own way, I want kids to learn to spot this behavior in their own lives and empathize with its ill effects. Abuse is not normal, and I hope that message will be conveyed by watching Pigbog learn it firsthand. Pigbog's guardians aren't in the show for very long. After the first few episodes, Pigbog leaves home and embarks on his quest for glory. However, they appear periodically in flashbacks, showing us how Pigbog's worldview has been shaped by their influence, not in very positive ways. Maybe they show up in the present again, too! Who knows? We'll see. Also, notice how my dream voice actors for them have all voiced iconic cartoon villains? I think that's neat.
It would be so awesome. It would be so cool.
Vera is Winona's mom, and a powerful archdemon. Vera lives in the Old Country's demonic Underrealm, a fiery wasteland of deadly creatures that is constantly under siege for resources by the world above. Vera employs her daughter Winona to slay demons and monsters in the Old Country proper to prepare for an uprising. Vera and her demonic forces plan to rise from the Underrealm and take over the world once Winona clears out the competition. In Vera's mind, Winona is her tool and an informant on topside. Since she's lived a life trying to defend her turf, Vera is incredibly domineering, and tends to take over every conversation she's in. She's haughty, boastful, and proud of the power she's earned. Vera talks to Winona like a debutante, which clashes with Winona's rough-and-tumble, no-frills personality. Vera is the picture of demonic elegance, and will go to any lengths to defend her coveted throne, as long as she doesn't have to get her hands dirty. Throughout the show, Vera periodically checks in on Winona and the status of her mission to slay Pigbog using a crystalline communication device, which Winona has to keep top secret. Pigbog and Vera are essentially after the same thing. At some point, they're gonna have to fight. Will Winona go through with her mission to slay Pigbog? Will she have a change of heart? Or will Vera and her infernal minions finally take matters into their own hands? Voicekins: Malik Berger, Journey Smollett. Wickeldorf is our hero antagonist, and a character whose story runs parallel to Pigbog's. He's an up-and-coming hero on a quest to restore the Xenospire and bring order to the Old Country like so many others, but he's doing it his own way. He's not your typical picture of a noble warrior. Wickeldorf is timid, cowardly, and a staunch pacifist. He has the conflict orientation of a gummy bear, and the physical constitution of one too. Wickeldorf's father is the legendary, now retired hero Grufston, and Wickeldorf wants to live up to his macho father's legacy and high standards. But his meek nature and stalwart non-violence doesn't exactly lend itself to heroism in the Old Country, much less survival. Swashbuckling and swordplay are generally considered to get you places, not empathy and de-escalation, and this runs very counter to Pigbog's style. Wickeldorf's very existence challenges Pigbog's beliefs. If Pigbog is fire, explosive, and raging, then Wickeldorf is water, slippery and quelling. And as he and Pigbog both struggle to rise in their respective ranks and restore the Xenospire on their own terms, sooner or later they're gonna have to come face to face. Is Wickeldorf strong enough to beat Pigbog? Or is strength not the answer? Pigbog's personality is strong, where Wickeldorf's is weak, but maybe they have something to learn from each other. But in either case, is their influence on one another good or bad? Spoilers, if your ears perked up at the previous sentence, your instincts were right. Pigbog and Wickeldorf have increasing gay tension throughout the show, and it is followed up on. Will they be the animated MLM enemies to lovers story we deserve, or are they ultimately too incompatible? It's a major through line of the show. Find out with me! Voicekins: Harvey Guillen, Atticus Schaefer, Jay Baruchel. So those are the main guys. Now we're gonna rapid fire through some side characters and antagonists you should know about, then dive into the main cast's emotional damage, which you know I'm stoked for, and end this first video with a little taste of what's next. Cool? Cool. Other characters, friends and foes. The Old Country is chock full of colorful denizens and fantasy creatures. Here are some other folks Pigbog and company encounter on their journey. Bardolph Brokenstone, a wise dwarven wizard who travels the land seeking greater magical knowledge. He approaches Pigbog wanting to know the source of his power. Fun fact, Bardolph is based heavily on my first Pathfinder character. I'm a big nerd. Lord Ignatius Iggy Fastidious III, a haughty teenage prince who seeks to unify the feudal Old Country under one ruling body. Good luck with that, buddy. Gordy the Goblin, a young goblin with aspirations of minionhood. After crossing paths with Pigbog, Gordy latches onto him hugely, following the party and begging to be Pigbog's underling. It starts out sweet, but becomes sinister. And what's worse, Shrew becomes jealous of Gordy trying to steal his thunder. What a little freak! Milton, a cowardly chimera who is slated to become the new Prince of Beasts. He repeatedly attempts to establish prince-to-prince diplomacy and friendship with Pigbog, to which Pigbog responds coldly. Will Pigbog give poor Milton a chance? Just look at him. Scarlequin, a demented demon jester and one of Vera's infernal minions. He's sent to help Winona on her mission to slay Pigbog after Vera gets impatient. Will Winona let this creepy clown have his way? Princess Erica, a jaded young princess who lives in a ruined castle by the sea. She and Winona become friends, but Pigbog becomes insecure. Psst, notice anything about her color scheme that might indicate something about Erica's identity? Listen, I know it's a cheap trick, but I couldn't resist. She's far from the only one, too. Hogmire and Froggoat, a snooty villain in training from the northeastern Chimera Kingdom and his reluctant minion. Hogmire comes from high-class and robust world-traveling experience. Pigbog can't stand that, so he's formed a passionate, one-sided rivalry with Hogmire. Hogmire is like Wario if Wario had a Wario, if that makes sense. One of you out there laughed. Sarah, When Winona left the Underrealm to pursue a life of adventure topside, successful monster hunter Sarah took Winona under her wing. Winona's affinity for swords, proficiency at fighting, and sharp survival instincts were all reinforced by Sarah. A mentor and older sister figure, Sarah knows everything about Winona, except her demonic heritage, and I'm sure that won't cause any dramatic conflict. Estrella Fantastic, the current most popular hero in the Old Country. She's flashy, energetic, boundlessly happy, and barely keeping it together behind the scenes. Will this star burn out under pressure? Road, a prolific Tanuki shopkeeper who takes pride in his business but obtains his wares through questionable means. If you need a weird thing, he's your guy, just don't ask where it came from. The Nerd Squad, an amateur traditional RPG-style adventuring party who Pigbog mockingly nicknames the Nerd Squad. They are Alfie the Witch, silly resident spellcaster, Shan the Cleric, dedicated healer, Belle the Paladin, noble warrior, Max the Barbarian, powerhouse with a rocky past, and Ace the Bard, a bard who raps! Banter and the Preambles. Preambles are an ancient race of magical dinosaurs and dragons. As a powerful but endangered species, they lived secluded in caves, hiding from monster hunters who seek to siphon their magic. All Preambles act by strict codes of law, all except for Banter, a fun-loving and precocious young Preamble who befriends Pigbog and company. The other Preambles see Pigbog and the gang as bad influences on Banter, and by extension, their way of life. Will the Preambles let Banter cut loose with his new buds? The crew of the Foul Sea Hare, a band of mischievous pirates who prowl the Cove of Thieves. They kidnap Pigbog and friends and hold them for ransom. Belt, a mysterious rogue who never seems too far from Pigbog and friends, and thus also the Xenospire. What are their motives? What does their face look like? Do they even have a face? Beats me! Psst, again. Notice how I'm they-theming Belt? That's their pronouns. The writing was on the wall there. Belt is an extremely non-binary name. As a he-they, I get to make that joke. Star and Sky, a pair of devious sister witches who live in a gothic cathedral in Skullvania. They terrorize Pigbog and company when they come into town, playing magical pranks. The Augustine Rangers, a band of merry young rogues who perform acts of vigilante heroism for the destitute. Robin Hood Boy Scouts. We got Mercutio, recklessly optimistic leader, Saturday, timid, cursed warlock, Derry, stealthy tank, and Bevan, precocious weapons specialist. Gruffston, Wickeldorf's dad and retired legendary hero. His quote-unquote retirement is lax as he constantly gets pulled into one-last-job type adventures. Gruffston is brutish and crass, and he has upsettingly high expectations for his son, whose pacifism leads him in the opposite direction. There are shades of Pigbog, Winona, and a lot of other character stories in this one. It's almost as if that's intentional. Nanzita, Wickeldorf's girlfriend. She's snide, sarcastic, and downright mean to most people, Wickeldorf especially. Nanzita loves to party, and she's seemingly only ever content on the dance floor. The Shoggoth, an extra-dimensional, shape-shifting entity that seems to be stalking Pigbog and company. Its appearance is frightening, and its motives are unclear. Pigbog's past lives. It's nice to meet me? Running with the Ganondorf from Zelda parallels, Pigbog has been reincarnated dozens of times. The demonic spirit inside of him is undying, so long as it has devoted followers who will summon it back into physical form. This is the purpose of Pigbog's cult, to keep the Demon Prince's dark legacy alive. But as Pigbog's past incarnations have failed to successfully take over the world, the Demon Prince's cult has dwindled in numbers over the years. Pigbog's current trio of guardians are all that's left, so the pressure is on for our current Pigbog to follow through on his evil destiny this time. Pigbog doesn't share any memories with his previous incarnations at the start of the show, but Edison takes his bookkeeping role very seriously, stocking the massive castle library with rich biographies of Pigbog's past lives. Edison is adamant that Pigbog can learn from his predecessors, and maybe even commune with them spiritually someday, but Pigbog finds the whole thing boring and kinda creepy. When Pigbog leaves home, he's away from the castle library, unable to study his lineage. But a few seasons in, Pigbog hones his ability to commune with his former selves and access their advice and memories. Kinda like Aang seeking guidance from the previous avatars in The Last Airbender. But will Pigbog like what he sees in his past lives? The Xenospire.
Attention, denizens of the old country. I'm bored. How's about a quest?
The Xenospire is a large crystal kept at the center of the Old Country, and the conduit of magic on the planet. Magic in the Old Country is a force that flows through all living beings in invisible channels like veins. The Xenospire is like the heart of magic, and a vessel through which the many channels of magic intersect. It is kept in a heavily guarded and fortified castle. Though the Old Country has no centralized governmental bodies unifying its disparate kingdoms, several representatives from various kingdoms gather at the Xenospire's keep to guard the precious crystal. The Xenospire is more than just an object, though. It's a sentient being who thrives on the devotion of its protectors, and actively facilitates the disbursement of magic throughout the land. The Xenospire's protectors can communicate with it, and it's their job to tend to the crystal's needs. Lately, the Xenospire has been growing restless. Life cooped up in a castle gets stale after hundreds of years, a sentiment echoed by Pigbog almost exactly. To spice things up, the Xenospire does something drastic. It splits itself into 6 pieces, scattering itself across the Old Country. Whoever retrieves all 6 shards of the Xenospire and restores it back at its keep will receive 1 reality-altering wish from the Xenospire. Before partitioning itself, the Xenospire broadcasts a magical message to all denizens of the Old Country, a call to action for heroes, villains, and adventurers the world over. The Xenospire and its pieces are the MacGuffins of this story. Its shattering our literal call to adventure. The Council of the Xenospire, a group of devotees who live at the Xenospire's keep and make decisions for the crystal. The Xenospire is resentful of this arrangement, and lately has been taking every opportunity to spite the Council in the small ways it can. But will the Xenospire's rebellion escalate? Does the Council really know what's best for it? Cyrus, a nervous orc teen and one of the Xenospire's guards. Cyrus and the Xenospire have built a rapport over Cyrus's short time at the Xenospire's keep, which mostly consists of the Xenospire asking Cyrus to take it outside and Cyrus repeatedly refusing. Will Cyrus loosen up and respect the Xenospire's needs, or is it too dangerous? The Shardholders. Everyone in the Old Country is scrambling to retrieve the Xenospire's 6 shards and claim their greatest wish. Thousands of adventurers embarking on the same quest at the same time is truly the perfect storm. Possessing even just 1 shard of the Xenospire grants its holder powerful magic abilities, if harnessed correctly. Through fierce battles, black market dealings, or pure happenstance, the shards of the Xenospire landed in the hands of these people. These are effectively the antagonists of the show, and if Pigbog wants all 6 shards, he's gonna have to face them down sooner or later. Or somehow talk them out of a wish and magical power peacefully. But let's be real, that's not really Pigbog's style. But as his journey progresses and his relationship to the pacifist Wickeldorf deepens, maybe Pigbog will realize it should be? Each shard holder is the villain of their own season, adding new wrinkles of complexity to Pigbog's quest. Here are 3 I have in mind. Their little blurbs serve as teasers for the first 3 seasons of the show. I'll get into the final 3 once I talk about their respective seasons, because I do have ideas for every season of this show now. Of course I do. Did you think I didn't? This is my life now. This fake cartoon has driven me crazy, hence the tome framing device. Anyway, here's Faegan Boltstep. Faegan is an amateur blacksmith and fighter from the wastelands on the outskirts of Castle Pigbog. He frequents the Fight Pit, the back room at a seedy tavern that hosts pseudo-gladiatorial brawls, but he can't seem to get a win, even though he frequently cheats using magically reinforced armor. When Faegan accidentally gets a hold of a Xenospire shard, he welds it to a massive gauntlet that channels its power with destructive results, finally dominating the Fight Pit. But when a certain demon prince and his crew come to challenge Faegan for his coveted shard and newfound power, he doesn't take kindly to the competition. Will Faegan pack too big of a punch for Pigbog and pals, or is this shard holder a glass Joe? Cataline Cat Dragonbeard. Cataline is a young sailor from the Cove of Thieves, a cutthroat coastal shantytown full of crime and swashbuckling. Her father was the dread pirate Manuel Dragonbeard, who maintained his life of cruel thievery in order to provide for his family back home at the Cove. After her father's sudden passing, Cat becomes sole caretaker of her family, and life becomes even tougher in the Cove of Thieves without its #1 pirate to tempt violence seaward. But when a shard of the Xenospire falls out of the sky and lands squarely in Cat's cheek, she gains powerful lightning magic that proves incredibly effective on the water. Now, Cat wants the Xenospire's wish to secure a better life for her community. Will Pigbog and friends become sympathetic to Cataline's plight, or does a villain have to do whatever it takes? Princess Zuri. Zuri is a sadistic chimera from the harsh and desolate wastelands of the Old Country. One day, Zuri suddenly arrives at Chimera Keep with devastation in her wake and a shocking revelation. She is the rightful princess of chimeras, and she was ousted from the keep and barred from rule at a young age for being the product of a secret affair between the king and a mistress. Zuri was forcibly estranged from her cowardly brother Milton, who is currently being raised for the throne as she would have been. Raised in the cruelty of the wastelands instead, Zuri has strained her whole life to one day reclaim her throne and seek revenge on the family who abandoned her. Having battled her way to possession of a Xenospire shard, that time is now. Zuri is a force to be reckoned with or without her shard. She has ruthless reflexes, a chain sword, and a poisonous tail. Even aside from a combination of beasts, Zuri is so many things at once. A warrior, a princess, a daughter, and a sister scorned. Can Pigbog and friends even keep up? What's my motivation? Now we're getting to the juicy stuff. Like most characters, the Pigbog's Kingdom main players are goal-driven. A lot of the main cast have what I like to call parallel wounds. Their baggage is coming from similar places, and this is something they could either use to bond or breed conflict. Baggage against baggage is always messy. Time to get hardcore psychoanalytical on these kids. This is gonna get pretty honest and dark, but it's important to me that you know what's going on with these guys. Really, it's the lifeblood of the show. Pigbog's dream, of course, is to rule the world. It's the thrust of the show. But because Pigbog's guardians uncritically gave him this goal at birth and never challenged him to question or prepare for it in any real way, Pigbog is missing a plan. How does he want to take over the world? What are the practical steps toward this? Does he even want to take over the world after all? World domination is the aspiration of all Pigbogs. All his previous incarnations have died to do that one thing, and now it's all riding on our Pigbog. If ruling the world is his identity, what is Pigbog? What is he without it? Partially as an extension of this goal, Pigbog also just wants to be loved. He was raised in an environment where love had to be earned, and dissenting opinion was met with constant criticism and also basically imprisonment. Pigbog's stifling adolescence has squished him down like a spring, and now he's loaded and ready to pounce. He wants everyone to know his name. He wants to be in the position of authority that was instilled on him as an ideal since birth, but not for material gains. In fact, being a kid, he doesn't really care about any of that, at least not out of the abstract. Pigbog just craves the spotlight. He was raised by people who refused to tell him he was good, and now he wants to prove the world wrong. Ruling the world seems like a pretty good way to put your name in lights, but is it really? Winona wants to be a master of her craft, the art of fighting monsters. From an outsider's perspective, she already is. She's taken down lots of middle to high profile counts and beast lords in the old country. Heroes and villains in this world are all these huge, bombastic characters that are very difficult to live up to, but by most accounts, Winona already has. She does her job, and she does it well, but she never seems to be satisfied. So what's her deal? At the beginning of the show, it's not really about her, it's about her mom. Vera is Winona's main employer, so most of Winona's achievements are not on her own terms or in service of her own goals, even though really Vera deserves the least credit and could definitely do these things herself if she wanted to. Vera views everything as an inconvenience and as standing in the way of her domination of the demonic hierarchy. She'd never admit it, but Winona is little more than a means to this end, and Vera treats Winona like a tool. Vera never congratulates or praises Winona for her accomplishments. They're all just rungs in Vera's own ladder. She's incredibly passive-aggressive and critical toward Winona to boot, and she sees every slight transgressive behavior or self-interest for Winona as obstructive to her ultimate goal. This is how Vera controls Winona, by having Winona's plans also be her own, and by never satisfying Winona with praise or love, because she needs Winona to always be hungry for the next job. Motivated by a need to satisfy Vera that is bottomless by design. Maybe she'll tell me I did a good job this time. Maybe she'll approve of my lifestyle eventually, is always in the back of Winona's mind. This is super similar to Pigbog's upbringing. If only she could actually tell him. Winona's gotta learn to do things for herself, and to excel on her own terms. Clay is kind of a blank slate at the beginning of the show. Like Pigbog, he was born with a singular goal, that being to protect and serve Pigbog. But what happens when a being made by and for someone else gets to choose for themselves? For a while, Clay's not really sure. Who would be? Clay doesn't want for much, mainly because he was never given the option. But outside Castle Pigbog, he gets to be a member of a party, and he gets to develop interests. Pigbog is all hyperstimulus. He can't imagine not wanting to do everything, go everywhere, and have the world to himself. When given the choice, Clay is a pretty low-key guy. For most of his life, Clay couldn't imagine wanting anything but Pigbog's safety and happiness. Clay eventually finds that his natural interests lie outside of conquest. He likes long walks by riverside, rocks, birdwatching, and snakes. Pigbog can't fathom being fascinated by things so simple and boring. He won't settle for anything less than the most. Clay's simplicity and zen totally confound Pigbog. Shrew is all id, all instinct. He's like a puppy being let out to play for the first time. He's Pigbog's base desires personified, wild, unfiltered, and unabashed. But he's also his own person who, like Clay, needs to contend with the fact that he was created under Pigbog's shadow. Shrew is a minion. What do minions want? Shrew's angle is mostly about the concept of usefulness. Like Winona to Vera, he's kind of Pigbog's tool, and by virtue of being a minion, he has this inbuilt desire to be useful. Shrew grew up alongside Pigbog, and he knows that Pigbog needs constant stimulus to maintain interest. Pigbog might not think of it like this, but he sees Shrew as a tool at best and a toy at worst. He hasn't done much to build up Shrew's sense of purpose beyond how Shrew can entertain him as a playmate or be advantageous in a fight. Shrew has spent his whole life watching Pigbog use and abandon toys and tools alike frivolously. He's afraid Pigbog will get bored of him. Shrew wants to be loved in a way that can never be revoked. He's a cartoon mascot desperate to stay relevant. Our Season 1 villain deserves some real estate for sure. Faegan is a lot like if Pigbog got older and jaded. Faegan is a scrawny guy. Even his years in the fight pit haven't bulked him up to his satisfaction, modeled after the lofty fitness goals of old country legends like Estrella and Grufston. He's scrawny partially because he was born in the wastelands, in poverty and sheltered from the elements. Faegan was picked on as a kid for surviving wrong, for not being the masculine ideal, and his lack of self-confidence from bullying caused him to ignore the external barriers to getting fit, and instead convinced him he was destined to be this way. So, he he tried to get on in other ways, smithing armor and weapons to protect himself and posture strength. But also like Pigbog, Faegan is constantly overcompensating for an internal lack of respect. So he always puts his eggs in one basket, whether that's single-mindedly pursuing championship of the fight pit, or focusing all his smithing efforts and resources on one giant sword, one heaving breastplate, one massive gauntlet to hinge all his protection on, rather than seeing the forest for the trees and dividing his efforts more equally. Faegan tries really hard, even when he's trying hard to cheat, but he goes at it the wrong way. You gotta build muscle to gain muscle. For reasons Faegan initially couldn't control, he didn't. Like Pigbog, Faegan wants respect and recognition. He wants everyone to see the strength he's built throughout his life as valid. Faegan refuses to believe that the way he goes about things is wrong, or that it was ever his choice. A lot of it wasn't. I very much don't want to blame Faegan for his poverty or lack of physical fitness, especially since the two intersect. Instead, Faegan is detestable because of what he chooses to do with power once he gets it. Exact wrath and vengeance. And even that is understandable, I hope. Pigbog contending for his Xenospire shard is, to Faegan, like a trust fund kid asking you for his wallet. You don't need it. I worked for it. I deserve it. Wickeldorf is a ball of anxiety trying to prove himself. Anxiety is self-destructive in so many aspects, goals chief among them. If you're constantly subverting yourself, how can you get anything done? It's not all in Wickeldorf's head, though. Like Pigbog and Winona, Wickeldorf was raised with high expectations by an unloving parent. Grufston is a legendary hero now in retirement, and very much the masculine ideal people like Faegan were always held to. Being in the shadow of that sucked for Wickeldorf. With an anxious mind from a young age, Wickeldorf naturally assumed he couldn't attain his father's status, even though there were no practical reasons he couldn't. But, like Winona and Pigbog's guardians, Grufston always felt the need to hang this ideal over his son's head, always out of reach. He would never tell Wickeldorf he was good enough, strong enough, or brave enough at anything. Early attempts at traditional swashbuckling heroism by Wickeldorf were met with harsh criticism by his dad, who felt that, to surpass him in legend, Wickeldorf needed to run the gauntlet of masculine idealism to this bottomless, never-satisfied extent. You'd think Wickeldorf would be as ideologically slippery as his constitution and anxiety make him, but he's very self-actualized at the beginning of the show. Wickeldorf is a staunch pacifist, and his belief in this is so fixed that not even his own normally weak will can budge it. Wickeldorf has something to prove, that non-violence can win the day, and that the heroic but nonetheless bloody ideal Grufston has held him to isn't the only way to be. Wickeldorf needs to be right. This is how he thinks he can finally surpass his father. It has to be on his own terms. But is it possible to stay non-violent forever, especially against someone as chaotic and driven as Pigbog? See me trying to put themes together? It's almost like a real show, just without the actual show. That's what this silly experiment is all about. Hopefully it's given you a good idea of the story I want to tell so far. And I have more. What more? On the next installment of the Pigbog's Kingdom Pitch Tome video version, we get more granular still. A bunch of stuff about the setting, episode samples, and an overview of the pilot episode and first season. Then the rest of the seasons until I'm done. If I can't make a show all by myself, I can describe it to you in detail and let you decide if it's something you like that way. And maybe you could even give me literally $1 million to make it real. But I'm not holding my breath. Really, I'm not. Holding your breath isn't healthy. You know, it's better to breathe. They don't tell you that in grade school.
Hey, sorry, the audio kind of sucks here. I moved recently, so I'm still trying to figure out a mic setup that's comparable to the old one, which was happening from inside of a literal closet where my desk also was. Also, the cats decided to start playing as soon as I started talking, because of course they did. One more editing tucker here, this time much closer to the actual publishing date of this video. Remember earlier when I said I wanted to get this out by August? At the time, I meant August of last year, meaning almost a whole year has passed since I last had time to touch this video. Now it's finally done, indeed in time for Indie Animation Day 2024, so hooray for me, I guess. Wow, I can't believe I scammed you into listening to me talk about my OCs and their emotional damage for an hour. With all this information in mind, perhaps someday you can approach the level of freak that I am about these blorbos. Just wait till you hear about some of the actual plots I put them through. Perhaps now that you've been introduced to these fantasy kids, me telling their stories will conjure a comparable amount of narrative entertainment value to what it would be if it were actually a real show. I know most of this video has been intention stating, but I came up with a good way to describe it recently. What I want to do here is give you the shape and texture of a show without even necessarily having to watch the whole show in the same way that a lot of video essays do. I'm trying to make a Lady Night the Brave or Yara Zaid or Movies with Mikey video about a show that doesn't fully exist. But you already gathered that by now, I'm sure. I realize I may not have hammered it in quite enough that most of this has been available to read as a digital PDF on huggerwooly.com/pigbog.html since April 2021, and I'm making new illustrations, season overviews, and other bonus pages in static formats to this day. This is meant to be a sort of new edition of the original Pitch Tome, edited slightly and with the bonus pages I've made up to now incorporated. Plus, stuff I've yet to make. I promise not to George Lucas this this thing too terribly much more than I already have. But yeah, you can read the original version of the book, including stuff that will be in future installments of this video series, watch all the animatics, and see every environment piece and doodle I've ever done for the Pigbog project over on my website. And you can see basically everything I'm doing ahead of time as I'm doing it on my Patreon. I teased it before, but having had about a year to think about it since, I think the rest of this video series is going to go like this. Next video will be all the stuff about the setting, some episode samples, and an overview of Season 1. The one after that will be a few housekeeping things, and then an overview of Season 2. Then all the ones after that will be a season overview each, potentially combining some if they're not too long, all the way up to Season 6, which is the last one. Between those bigger season overview videos, I want to do smaller interstitial videos about various non-plot related things. In the original book, the whole end section is bits of trivia, miscellaneous illustrations, fan art, the origins of these characters, a lot of which date back to over a decade ago, and other extras. And I want those pages to be translated into this version of the book, but interspersed throughout more organically. This series won't be all my YouTube channel is, though. I've got a lot more coming. More himbo, more fungulinus, more cartoons of all sorts, and more video essays as well. The Mutant Nostalgia of Fiona and Cake Season 1 is the tentative title for my next Adventure Time essay, which will hopefully be out by the fall. I've got more essays about cartoons. I've got more essays about not cartoons. I've got a new long-form Krampus comic series in the pipe soon. And of course, more stuff with Anarchy Funhouse and Mugshot and Pollen, plus my survival retail job. And yeah, I'm really busy, and nothing takes nearly the amount of time to get done that I would like it to. But you know, if I had my way, I would live forever, so my head's not exactly on straight. That doubles as a joke about me being gay. Anyway, I'm gonna stop talking for real now. Thank you for being here. There is more to come. Pigbog forever.